music and good vibes and laughter and lovers, adventure and friendship. We know who we are. And I don't think I would be me without you being you. Your direction, expression, intention has taken us far.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beethewellness Podcast, episode number 25. Is that Doce Cinco?
No, not Doce. Veinte Cinco. Yeah. Actually, this is Veinte Cinco parte dos.
Yeah, that's true.
Parte dos, because we actually recorded this entire podcast, yesterday?
No, like 3 days ago.
Oh, 3 days ago, yeah. What day is it? And we lost it.
Yeah. Pretty much. Note to power users out there, 100% need to make sure that you've got at least 100 gigabytes of memory available when you're doing this kind of stuff.
At any given time.
At any given time, yeah. We basically ran out of memory somewhere during the recording, and it corrupted the file, and so sad. And
it was the best podcast ever.
It really was. Like, you guys, it's so unfortunate. I don't know that we're going to be able to do that again.
This is a tribute podcast to the best podcast in the world.
Tenacious D.
Yes.
Goodness.
So, once again, let's recap Burning Man.
Yeah.
We had an amazing time, as expected.
Yep, as it did. Yeah, Burning Man really delivered this year. It was it was like a for real Burning Man year, like all the things that everyone warns you about, like freezing cold nights and hellacious windstorms and whiteouts for hours and hours at a time, and all of those things happened.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And I think, I was saying actually on the last podcast that we talked about this, one of the things that was really cool about Burning Man this year is that, I read an article where someone said Burning Man felt small. And it wasn't referring to the numbers of attendees or any of that kind of stuff, because obviously it's the largest in terms of attendance than ever. But the reason I think it felt small is that because of the dust storms, because of the cold weather, because of the extreme conditions, you felt sort of huddled together in groups, and you would kind of, stick a little closer to home. You were getting to know your own camp and the surrounding campers more than usual.
Their stuff blows all over yours.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we literally had the neighboring camps. What do you call that?
I mean, it was kind of it was like a homemade geodesic dome shade structure.
Right. Yeah.
That was obviously not wind tested.
Yes, pretty much wrapped itself around our good friend's RV while we were inside of it. Literally we were trapped inside.
I mean, there were worse places to be trapped, but that.
Yes.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
It was bizarre, and it was just literally like a windstorm outside. Everyone's clothes and belongings and everything was blowing through the camp. There was all of these randomly, it must have been a camp of like Sherpa looking people, because they were all dressed in
they were dressed like Sherpas. It was
they were dressed like Sherpas.
They came to our rescue. Yeah, we're literally stuck inside of the RV, and we're like, well, I don't know. I mean, I know there's an emergency exit in the back, and all of a sudden, like through the dust and all the madness, you could see like hands in the windshield, and they're like pulling on stuff and moving things around. And once they finally got it open, there was like 10 or 12 people that came from, I'm not sure that they all came from the same camp, because there was at least 4 different languages getting spoken out there. And like, I was the only one speaking English, or, Glenn.
Yes.
Hey, what's going on? You know what? None of these guys speak English, and they're doing a really good job. So why don't we just let them alone,
Yeah, and we're not talking Sherpas like the people who help set up the plug-and-play camps. We're talking about, like, Tibetan Sherpas.
Yeah,
like the real deal. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
They disappeared.
They did.
They took the whole thing apart, stacked it all up very nice and neat, got everything cleared out, and left.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I guess we did hear that quite a few people, literally, the storms and the cold literally blew people out of there early, and folks lost their habitats and had to abandon Burning Man early. They just literally didn't have anywhere to live.
They lost all their stuff. Yeah, because it's a real thing. Like once you're homeless, and when it's cold, I mean, it's in the the low 30s
Oh yeah.
Which is not, I mean, it's not super cold, but it's not spend a night outside and be fine cold.
But it's desert cold too. It's like that bone chilling, just cold. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how else to explain it, but yeah. So Burning
but other
Man,
than that, it was amazing.
That was amazing. Yeah. So I guess the burning has continued because I got back to my mom's house to pick up the dogs after Burning Man, and we've had a major catastrophe here, natural disaster, a huge fire that's pretty much, well, we were just talking about this. The early reports are saying almost 900 homes burned. Adam, I guess you said that you've heard reports from people on the ground that it's closer to 2,000.
Totally. Yeah. And so this is like, what's crazy. Well, there's a lot of things that are crazy about it, but one from my perspective, one of the things that's really crazy about it is that this is the second fire within, the same 10 square miles, that has gone catastrophic. The other one, fortunately, earlier in the year, I actually posted a picture in the feed of that fire and made a comment about how it was breaking records for acres burned in a number of hours. And it was, I think it was 10,000 acres or maybe 14,000 acres in 5 hours. And that was this record. Well, this one that Vanessa's referring to, the Valley Fire, went 40,000 acres in 12 hours. And the majority of that 12 hours was at night.
Yes. And this
Absolutely
is
insane with no wind. It's
right.
just bizarre. It's a trip.
It was a perfect storm of events, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only thing that could have made it worse is if there was actually wind, something that would have blown it even farther. But it's a trip. It's a devastating fire and it'll take a while, like the one of the communities is almost gone,
So this is up in Lake County where I grew up. And, like Adam said, this is literally, like a couple of the communities here are devastated, meaning like 9 out of 10 people lost their homes. And this is a very small community and not a very affluent community to begin with. So this is devastating. It's devastating. Yeah. So my mom and I were actually on evacuation notice for a few days here. We had literally had to load up all the photo albums and family, memories. Things that were important that we couldn't replace. And we were literally just on standby for 2 or 3 days while the neighboring communities were all evacuated. We were literally the next to go. So it was a pretty crazy re-entry from Burning Man into that situation. It was, obviously we didn't get evacuated and we've been able to stay here and, we're lucky everything's fine for us, but the collective consciousness, the energy that's being felt in the community right now is really intense. I mean, the sadness, the despair, and also the joy and the love, it's this strange, intense dichotomy of emotion. And, people coming in droves to be helpful and provide whatever assistance they can. And, juxtaposed to just people literally going, I don't even have a toothbrush. Yeah. I'm people staying at the local high school, which is an evacuation center. And just literally like I left and I have this t-shirt on my back and what I'm wearing, I have nothing else. Yeah.
It is one of the things that I think is always striking when you get, when you get involved with a catastrophe of this sort of magnitude is that because you don't really know what people are going to actually need until you get in and do it. And then you realize you're like, oh, wow. People will come, they're like, oh, I'm going to donate a microwave and I'm going to bring a blender and I'm going to, which is awesome. Like people are trying to help and do this kind of stuff. But you're like, no, I could use a left shoe, a toothbrush, and some razors, like some basic hygiene stuff. Because it's amazing how much stuff we surround ourselves with that aren't actually required, and then when you take it away, it's like food, some sort of shelter, and an iPhone.
It's true. Really an iPhone. And there's an app for all of this. Yeah, no, it's pretty wild. And, this fire moved through so quickly that many people lost. This is a ranching community. There's a lot of horses. There's a lot of farmland. We've had people friends that had to literally put down their horses that were on fire. I mean, literally could load them up fast enough, and like the fire's moving through so quickly, they had to put their horses down before they flee. I mean, this is like a Katrina style disaster, event. Obviously not to the magnitude. Yeah, but I mean, this is like some really devastating things that have been going on. And yeah, it's been a pretty wild experience. I'm still up here actually kind of hanging tight with my mom and for a few more days until everybody's kind of really cleared out and good to go. But yeah, so anyhow, we've had I think a friend of mine said, what goes up must come down. And it was like, we had such a blissful experience at Burning Man that it was like, whoa, coming down was hard.
Yeah, it was good. It was like, wow, there's a whole lot of reality over here. You know?
Yes,
like, unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
So there was a thing on, I think it might have been on Facebook, and I'm not sure that it was real or not, but there was a picture of this. I'm going to pretend it is because it's a good story. There was a picture of this like kind of sketchy looking German Shepherd dog, you know, sitting with a kitten in its mouth.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Did you see that?
I saw this.
Yeah. So basically the caption was that this guy's dog, like he unchained the dog because the fire's coming, and the dog like beat feet into the fire and came back with his kitten.
With the kitten. I know. Well, it was his kitten. Like at least the way I read it, it was their kitten. But,
oh, gotcha. It wasn't just some random kitten.
It wasn't some random kitten. It was their kitten. Yeah. And the dog just happened to be able to locate it with its spidey senses and grab it and take off. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's really crazy. Like the dichotomy of emotion, you know, you're just like devastated, and then you're like, oh my God, the dog saved the kitten. Like just seriously. These beautifully poignant, sweet moments that you're like, oh my gosh, this is a real example of humanity and the human experience and just how intense it can be. Yeah. And so
it's total, like it's frankly, it's one of the reasons why I'm like an optimist for humans, you know, because really the things that tend to drive us apart are things that don't really matter, you know?
I agree.
And I've been involved in a lot of emergency, disaster, horrible situations. And inevitably or invariably, this is what happens. People come together when their fellow man is in need. You know, and then as soon as they're not in need, then their petty differences start again. But when they are, this is just what we do, you know? So.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it really is beautiful. I mean, I'm definitely everyone here is feeling the intensity of the situation, but also feeling the intensity of generosity and love and compassion and just human kindness. So, you know, this is what's been going on for us. We've had this amazing experience, and then Adam went back to work, and there was craziness happening in his world at work too as well. And and then this was, I think they're saying this is maybe the 5th or 6th worst fire in California history.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're saying it's the 5th, but the 5th most destructive, right? Okay. So, and again, this kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, is it 900 homes? Is it 2,000 homes? Is it 1,000 structures? And, you know, 400 of them were homes. I mean, it's really hard to just get into the statistics of it all, but yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it is a catastrophic incident. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So anyhow, keep everyone here in your thoughts and prayers. Like we said, this is the Valley Fire. If you guys want to look it up, I'm sure there's tons of information out there. You can check it out.
There is. And there's also, people are setting up GoFundMe campaigns for people. So there's, if there is something that you want to, you know, donate to at some point, like I would just go, I'm sure, I don't really know how GoFundMe works, but I'm guessing you can just Google GoFundMe Valley Fire and you'll come up with a bunch of people who have, you know.
Yeah, you can actually hashtag Valley Fire in Facebook, and it's bringing up, GoFundMes and just general information. It's crazy for me because I'm literally watching my feed full of people that I know with GoFundMes, and I'm just like trying to donate to as many as I can. I'm like, literally, this is my whole childhood community on GoFundMe right now. I mean, it's just wild. It's really wild. And if any of you feel inclined to donate, I'm sure it'd be very greatly appreciated by friends and family around here.
Pretty much everyone.
Yeah. Yes.
So, the other thing we forgot to mention, to bring it back up a notch, The other thing we forgot to mention about Burning Man was that we took Marco and Ben camped with us. Right?
Yes.
So our Vimifires, and we had the best time.
The
basically,
best time.
I think that's going to have to be the annual Be the Wellness planning retreat.
Yes.
It's awesome. Actually, we didn't really even talk about work at all, but just the opportunity to hang out with those guys and kind of get to know them on another level. And it's cool. We're happier than we've ever been about being in business with these guys. So
yes, genuinely amazing, wonderful men. And we're just so grateful. Like, we just got to, like Adam said, we got to just get to know them on a much deeper level. And they're some remarkable dudes. So we're very, very blessed to have them in our pack. And yeah, it really inspired us, even though it's not like the focus of that adventure was work. It really inspired us all to be together and realize how much passion and creativity and, excitement we have for the potential of where everything can go with Vimify, with Be the Wellness,
with Victory Belt, with Wood Chin, with Paleo Bug. I mean, that was one of the things we were realizing is that we have this vortex of people, that are, they're just incredible. They're all making their way in this space, and it just seems inevitable that we're going to come up with something, whether it's, Unveil Your Wellness or some other thing that is sort of a conglomerate of all of our particular talents,
Yes. Yeah, and Victory Belt, for those of you who don't know, is the publishing company for 99% of the paleo books out there. So we camped with our best friends, Katie and Glenn Cordoza, who we've talked about before on here. Katie has the blog paleobug.com. Glenn is co-author of Becoming a Supple Leopard with Kelly Starrett, and 25
other books.
Yeah, and 25 other paleo whatever training books. And then Arish and Georgina are they're best friends through them. They're extensions of our best friends. And Arish owns Victory Belt Publishing and his wife. So it was great to get to spend more time with them. And, like Adam said, between all of us, we have so much passion and enthusiasm for this world that we're in, that it's exciting to have a time to kind of combine our forces and think about what we can do moving forward.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, talk about an interesting guy. Arish was blowing my mind. Some of his stories. I mean, he's got to be my age, maybe like a year younger than me. Right. I don't know, but that guy's been around.
Yeah. I mean, he told us a story about being bit by a bat in the toe when he was in the middle of the jungle in Costa Rica and thinking he was going to die. And it was a really good trip to commune with our paleo family. So, we really enjoyed our camp this year. We enjoyed just every aspect of it. It was like every year is a little bit different experience, but this one in particular was really sweet. It was very loving and very sweet and very homey for us. I don't really know how else to explain it. Yep.
I think that's good.
I got to have my birthday.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Somehow I was able to manipulate the Burning Man powers that be and convince them energetically to push back Burning Man 1 week.
Yeah.
And my birthday fell on the Friday.
Smack in the middle. Yeah.
And I had the best birthday ever. If you guys don't follow Nesta on Instagram, you can follow me at Nesta Tunes, and you could check out my hand-painted silk wings that I had made. And I got to be a butterfly my whole birthday and fly around, literally, in the dust storm on the playa with my friends. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was
at District.
Anyway, you'll have to we can't even describe the scenario. Like, you probably should just check out the photos.
Yes, exactly. So, okay. I guess we can move on. Let's go. Yeah. We're just kind of getting back in and rambling a little bit. Hope you guys don't mind, but we're just excited to be back in touch with you guys and connecting again and getting everyone sort of connected back into what we've been doing and all that good stuff. So hopefully
where we're going.
Yeah. So let's see what else we've got. I've got the new album coming out in just a few short weeks. It drops on October 6th. So that's really exciting. We've been working really hard and been getting some good press on the first single. I don't know if you guys had a chance to check out our music video, and that launched on Huffington Post right before we left for Burning Man. So we got to get some great press from that, and there's some other good stuff coming up in the wings for the album. We're planning the release party, which looks like it's going to be on Friday, October 15th in Venice at Full Circle, which is a really cool venue in Venice Beach. And we'll hopefully have some more details on that. If anyone wants to come out, you are more than welcome to come celebrate the release of that. And and the album is for sale. It's actually for pre-order on iTunes right now. So if you guys are considering checking it out, pre-order is the way to go. You get 2 instant gratification tracks right away, and you can start rocking instantly.
Sweet.
Yes.
What about Costa Rica?
So, we literally have 3 spaces left. We have room for 1 single female. We had a cancellation, unfortunately, but that leaves an opening for 1 individual in an ocean view room. So if anyone out there wants to hop on, any single women out there or women who would like to come alone, you have a spot. And then we have 1 additional room. So literally for 2 more people, either a couple or 2 individuals. But that's what we have right now. And we're really excited. Looks like we'll probably sell this one out. And, we plan on doing them in Costa Rica again, but we also reserve the right to change our mind. So
change venues.
We just, we've talked about doing it in different locations, potentially doing it in Peru, doing something a little bit different format. We love Costa Rica. It's amazing. It's such a great place to do a retreat that we probably will do one again. But if you are thinking, well, I'll just go next year or the year after, like I said, we'll probably do one next year, but no guarantees. So if you're on the fence, you might want to think about just getting on board and doing it this year.
Yeah. Or
next year.
2016. Whatever that means.
Yeah.
Totally. Super cool.
So that's it.
Yeah. Bam. All the business out of the way.
Yeah, everyone is updated.
Okay. So what spurred us to try to record this 3 days ago was actually a really good question in the feed, and it was a sort of a clarifying question based on one of the insulin articles. And I, after reading the question, went back and reread the article and was like, clearly I did not write this well enough. I definitely left out some stuff. So what I'm gonna try to do is kind of capture some of that and explain kind of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So
and you did a good job. It was just it's a complex topic that has a lot of nuances, and so when you're trying to compact it into bite-sized pieces, inevitably something gets lost out, misconstrued or lost, or just needs a little bit of clarification. So it's not that you did a bad job. We just need to
do a better job.
You could just do a better job. Glass half full.
Yeah.
So here's the better job. Yeah.
Here's the better job. One of the first things that we need to stipify is what we really mean by low carb, and that's one of the things I said in there. A low carb diet does blah blah blah. Well, there's a lot of different iterations on that, right? And so, talking specifically in this part about being low carb and how being low carb can cause insulin resistance. And I kind of made that point and then left it at that, which is clearly not enough information. Right?
Yeah, so here's the bomb that I'm going to drop on everything you've ever known.
Right, and so it's true. This does happen. It's a protective mechanism that the body has. Typically, you're not going to get to that point unless you're low carb in the 10% of calories or less, right? So, and this is the 10% of calories or less is a single macronutrient, right? So it's not taking into consideration total caloric intake or anything like that. So if you're just eating, 2,500 calories a day and only 10% of those or less come from carbohydrate, then there's a potential for this to happen, right?
Right.
And then the other part of this where it gets a little bit stickier is that even a very well-crafted, high-fat ketogenic diet can do the same thing. And the reason I differentiate between the two is because, well, typically a high-fat ketogenic diet will probably consist of less than 10%. That ratio of fat to carbohydrate seems to play some sort of a role. And I don't really know exactly the mechanism or why it would be, it probably could be chalked up to individual variability. But bottom line, in order to get this effect, we're talking about pretty low carbohydrate intake.
Like you are making a concerted effort to be as low as you can, essentially. I mean, realistically.
And if you're trying to stay ketogenic, and so this is where I think people tend to get sideways with this sometimes, is that a lot of people, I mean, I think we're coming around to it now, but in the initial phase when you're like, all right, I'm going low carb. All right, well, that worked for a little while. Now I'm going to go lower carb. Wait, what's this ketogenic? Okay, I'm going to try to be ketogenic. And they try to actually, pee on ketone strips and stuff like that to test. And what they're finding is that even with a quote unquote zero carbohydrate diet, they're not able to get ketogenic. So they're like, all right, well, we're just going to keep trying and keep trying. And typically what the problem is that they're eating too much protein, right?
Right.
But while they're figuring that out, they're spending a lot of time in this incredibly low carbohydrate zone and almost undoubtedly causing some level of insulin resistance. So,
right. And you see this a lot, especially for folks, both men and women, but I see it a lot with women when they do, like Adam said, they'll initially go low carb. They'll see some really great results, some fat loss. They'll start feeling really good. And then eventually they'll plateau. And that initial amount of carbohydrate or whatever they're doing, they'll think, okay, well, I've plateaued and I've got to double down. I've got to reduce my carbohydrate even lower because I've plateaued, and clearly it's the carbohydrate that's the culprit. This is what's stalling my weight loss. And, this is kind of learning curves for everybody because this is sort of the way that people were approaching it for the long time. It's like the lowest carb person wins. And that's not necessarily the case. So ultimately that's when you might want to look at changing up your macronutrient strategy. But like Adam said, you may end up, as a result of this mentality, you may end up spending a bunch of time really, really low carbohydrate.
Yeah. And so, that insulin resistance that comes from it is perfectly normal. Like I said, this is a natural and necessary response, right? So, and the idea is that there's two different kinds of cells. I think it's two. There may be one, I don't know. There's a very small number of cells in the brain, kinds of cells in the brain that are purely glycolytic. It's like 2 or 3, meaning that they really only can run on glucose.
Right.
And they just don't function on ketones or lactate in any meaningful way. And so what your body's doing when there's very low availability of dietary carbohydrate, it makes you insulin resistant in an effort to let your blood sugar levels come up a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it's doing, which is awesome. Like that's a super cool thing. But the reason that I think that this is important is that you have to understand that being in this extreme range is decreasing your body's metabolic flexibility, meaning that, at the mitochondria level is where, the decisions are being made of what kind of fuel or what fuel source we're going to use and how we're going to do this kind of stuff. And so being metabolically flexible means that you can, when there's sugar available, you burn it. And when it's not available, you readily mobilize fat and lactate to make up the difference, right?
Right.
And so by being in this extremely low carbohydrate environment, you're taking some of that metabolic flexibility away. So when you do get a bolus of sugar, your body's less apt to be able to deal with it.
Right.
So this is the same, this is a recommendation that is made for women who get pregnant, who are trying to be very low carbohydrate, and then they become pregnant. When they go in as part of their care, they generally speaking will get a oral glucose tolerance test to find out if they have what do they call that, gestational diabetes, right?
Right.
So if you've been super low carb and you go in and take an oral glucose tolerance test, you're probably going to fail it. So because you're going to be so insulin resistant, they're like, oh well, guess what, you've got gestational diabetes, and then put you on all sorts of weird medication, or whatever they do. So like there's a hack for that that's kind of known. Like if you look at Chris Kresser's personal babe, no. What's his baby code?
Baby code, something
perfect baby code. I don't know.
I can't remember.
I don't know. Anyway, he's
something
got,
baby code. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great program. But one of the things that he talks about in there is that, okay, well, eat, 50 grams of rice a day for the week leading up to your your oral glucose tolerance test so that you don't fail it,
Right.
And so it's important to just understand that this stuff is going on and back and forth. And so another sort of side effect of this is like if you're taking this super low carb or ketogenic approach as like an intervention, you're saying, oh, I'm obese, or I have whatever particular thing going on. So I'm going to try this super, super low carbohydrate thing. But then eventually return to eating normal once I kind of see whatever goal it is. Then you just need to understand that when you transition back into this carbohydrate feeding diet, that you're probably going to be insulin resistant. And if you go too hard too quickly, you're probably going to gain some weight, know, and so actually in the bodybuilding world, they call it reverse dieting. So after a competition where these people have been so depleted for so long, and they go like zero carbohydrate until competition day, and then drink a bunch of Caro syrup to, pull the glycogen. That is bad for you, obviously. But then, it's not good for you. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But in order to kind of get back to normal without putting on a ton of extra body fat that they're just going to have to strip off again, they do a very slow incremental increase in carbohydrate. And it's like 5% a day, right? So you start at 0, and then one day you have 5% of total calories, and the next day you have 10, and the next day you have 15. And, and it takes some progression like that to ramp your body back up and get things, metabolically flexible again. So,
right. And, it might be important to talk about why being metabolically flexible is important, because, maybe, and there might be folks out there that just decide, I don't, maybe metabolic flexibility isn't as important to me. I'd rather, like you said, if they're treating some ailment, obesity, you have some kind of cancer that you're trying to be ketogenic, like maybe metabolic flexibility isn't a number one priority for you. But for most of us, I think it is. And it probably should weigh in to some extent, because you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into a place where you literally can't tolerate sugar. You can't tolerate, if you have a baked potato, you gain a pound. I mean, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself to the place where you have to be almost more anal than anyone out there in order to not gain a pound. And that's kind of where you'll put yourself. You'll just start headed in that direction. And the problem is, if you go off the rails for a couple of weeks and you eat normally, which may not even be super high carb, but maybe you just, start with having 100, 150 carbs a day, you'll start gaining weight.
Right.
And that's not what you're trying to accomplish with this.
And you'll gain fat too, right? So
fat,
and that's, actually gain fat, because it is one of the things that, we've talked about this before, like with the glycogen replenishment stuff. So if you pound 150 grams of carbohydrate from white rice, you're going to put on weight, but it may not be fat. It's just you're repleting everything, But the bottom line is that if exactly what Vanessa's saying, if you're lacking that metabolic flexibility, then re-entry into quote unquote normal low carb, 50 to 150 grams, 200 grams a day or whatever, could, it could be akin to eating 600 grams a day for a person who's, who has the metabolic flexibility. Right.
So, exactly. And the thing about it is, typically people who are really low carb, you're usually eating high fat, moderate to high protein. You're eating in a way that if you just literally pile carbs back on, you will gain fat, because that's a perfect combination. High fat, high carb. Yeah. I mean, that's basically exactly what we'd tell someone who wants to gain weight.
Are you looking to gain weight? Okay.
Yeah. Do this. A stick of butter and a pound of rice. Have at it. Yep. So that's why it's important to think about this metabolic flexibility. And, another point is, maybe being really, really low carb works for you and you feel really great and all of that is, everything's functioning really well. You just have to know, you just have to make a decision, an informed decision about where you want to put yourself in the spectrum of carbohydrate intake, so that you can keep some flexibility no matter, what you're doing and what your goals are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I keep coming back to this, that maintaining that flexibility is super important. And so there's actually, and this, it's just, you can just go down the rabbit hole with this stuff, but there's a couple of recent studies, and it totally makes sense, but I just wouldn't have thought of it. Is that these studies are coming out, and basically what they're saying is that the microbiome of the gut can actually become insulin resistant as well, which is sort of a trip if you think about that. So your chronic carbohydrate intake is making the cells that protect your blood-brain barrier insulin resistant, right? Which means that makes it hard for them. When something's insulin resistant, it's difficult for them to do what they need to do, right? It's hard for them to make energy. It's hard for them to sort of serve their function. And so in the gut, like specifically the endothelial cells, if they become insulin resistant and then start having a hard time metabolizing the sugar that's available, then they don't produce the mucin, right? Which the mucin is the building blocks of the mucosal membrane of the, your first line of defense for a leaky gut, right?
Yeah.
So there's like this weird thing that could go on where, let's say you're, for cancer purposes or for whatever reason, you're on a ketogenic diet long term and that's your plan. And unfortunately, you're probably not eating a lot of fermentable fibers, the things that are going to provide the energy for these cells, right? And so without the sugar around at all, your body becomes insulin resistant, like we talked about earlier, in order to protect this stuff. And then the sheer lack of fermentable fibers and dietary glucose or carbohydrate is starving these endothelial cells to some degree. And then they can't produce the mucin that protects, your blood-brain barrier. And then, we know how that goes. You get a leaky gut and something goes in and then you get an inflammatory response and, that makes it even more insulin resistant, So,
yes.
Yeah, it's a weird one. And I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's probably a relatively small subset of people who sort of fit into this camp, but it's
something we're talking about. Yeah,
it is. I really do think it is because we kind of go back and forth, and like I use markers like glucose, HbA1c, which is like your glucose over time, blood glucose over time, and LDL particle number and stuff like that to sort of look at insulin resistance and like from a heart disease perspective, right? So and you just kind of modulate all of that stuff based on okay, so if those numbers are good, then I'm probably not insulin resistant and my triglycerides are down. So the triglycerides are down, which means that my LDL particle number is probably good. I would say that I'm in a good cardiovascular space. But what it doesn't really take into account is whether or not you've got some sort of gut leakage going on. And then you get, a little bit of an infection, essentially, is really what it is. You get interleukin-6, I think, and one other funny named thing, ILP or something like that, cruising around in your circulatory system, and your body mounts a response to it. One of the responses to damage or infection or other emergencies in your in the endothelium of your circulatory system is to ramp up LDL particle production to carry cholesterol to go fix the damage. So you can spend all this time trying to sort out your lipid numbers to put yourself in a low risk category for cardiovascular disease. But if you ignore your gut, you can be just doubling down on the whole problem, Right. So from a sugar perspective,
you're creating it in a different way.
Yeah, but now, it's this whole thing. And a lot of this is just, we're in the last 3 years learning a lot about how this stuff works. And it's kind of interesting because I've talked about this book before, but Lights Out, Sugar, Sleep, and Survival by T.S. Wiley was like the book that it was like the first book that Rob Wolf recommended. He's like, read this book. I read it and I'm like, oh my God,
And let me tell you what a great day in my life that was when Adam Lambert learned that sleeping in was okay.
It's true. I was like, what? This is, and it's a great book. And still completely relevant. And one of the things that they talked about in there is how the immune system runs the show. Like the immune system is the most important thing in the body, and it's connected to everything. And if you don't mind your immune system, then it's going to be problematic. And that's really what we're seeing, right? So gut dysbiosis, problems with the gut biome, chronic inflammatory diseases, all of these things are essentially immune responses,
Right. We're learning that the gut is really the brain of the body. It's essentially running the whole show. And gut permeability is probably the most important thing that we need to look at least initially in our health. Everything else is going to probably fall into line if we fix the gut.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Absolutely.
And whether it's that the gut is fixed or that what you're doing to fix the gut fixes everything else.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. But it's that sort of idea that, when you go on vacation, you get a cold. You're like, okay, well, how did I get a cold when I went on vacation? Well, your body finally relaxed enough to start sort of allocating resources to your immune system. So you've had the cold, the virus has been there, but your body's been,
couldn't deal
in
with
survival mode, Yeah. So now you go on vacation, you get all relaxed, you have some fun in the sun, and your body's like, okay, cool, let's deal with this virus. And that's where you get the symptoms of having a cold, right?
Yeah, and this actually happens all the time. I see new clients, we start training together, and within, I would say, the first 90 days of really cleaning up their diet, most of them will get a serious cold, flu, something that will knock the wind out of their sails for a good week or two. And it's always on the heels of feeling great and wow, I'm getting all this, this sleep and I'm working out and everything feels great. And then the wheels come off the wagon. And it's a super common thing that you'll see. In fact, most of the time I just expect that will happen.
Yeah.
That most people will probably get something in the first 2 or 3 months of working together.
Totally. Yeah. And it's not like you want to tell them, so here's what to expect. You don't want to anyone to manifest their sickness, but as soon as they say it, you're like, yep. I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah. And you're like, it's a good sign. It means that you're working through some things that are pent up and that you need to deal with. And it's actually, a lot of people think of it as a negative thing. Like, what? I'm doing everything right and I get so sick. It's actually can be a really positive sign that you are really getting down to the cellular level and fixing some things like Adam said at the immune level. So it's good.
Yeah, totally. You had latent funk. Mm-hmm. That's what we call it. It's the latent funk syndrome, LFS.
Yeah. Which is also the name of our new band.
What was that name of your band thing? It was like the color of your underwear and the last thing you ate.
Oh my gosh. I've been having the most fun with this. Okay. So I posted this and I said, let's post. The band name is, like you said, the color of your underwear and the last thing you ate. And so I posted that I was Black Bacon, but I have had the most fun with this. People have been, polka dotted gummy bear. And for every person that has given me their band name, I've assigned a genre to it.
Oh, where does pinstripe lasagna fit in the mix?
Oh, that'd be let's see, pinstripe lasagna. I feel like that would have to be like a lounge bar, or a lounge
right?
bar. Yeah.
What was the Stray Cat Strut guy?
Exactly.
That was Stray Cat Strut by Polka Dot Leotard or whatever.
Yeah, polka dot gummy bear. No, you said beige lasagna. What did you say? I don't know.
Well, beige is a color. Pinstripe lasagna.
Lasagna. Yeah. It's been pretty funny. I've been cracking up. So anyway, if anyone wants to post that on their Facebook wall, they'll have a really fun time with it.
It's super fun.
Yeah. So anyway, but back to the gut biome. Pretty much, it's really where I think everyone's just kind of coming to the conclusion that it, like Socrates said. What did Socrates say?
Let food be thy medicine.
Let food be thy medicine. And then he also said another one, which is
something about your gut.
Yeah, I can't remember it right now.
That's
but
fine,
I'm like, what did Socrates say?
Strong use of colloquialisms.
Yes, hold on. This is actually my specialty. Adam will tell you that colloquialisms and sayings, all of those things are probably.
She likes to mash. She does mashups.
I mash. Yeah. Yes.
A bird in the hand. No, wait. If you throw a rock at two birds.
Stone two birds with the kill? What? What was it again? Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food.
Right, which is the one that we already knew.
Oh, did I say that? Oh, you said that one already? Oh. Yeah.
That's all right. There is something else he said that was smart, I'm sure.
Short-term memory loss. It's,
Well, you are in the middle of a fire environment in Lake and Mendocino counties.
Yeah, it gets you every time. Man, I really want to find this though, because it's like.
Okay, well, while you look,
I'm gonna carry on.
I'm gonna carry on.
Yes, please.
So, just to circle back around a little bit, we kind of got a little bit off, but talking about some of the other reasons why introducing some carbohydrate, or when introducing some carbohydrate, kind of might be a good idea, and because, like we were saying, you could be eating a diet of lean animal proteins or whatever kind of animal proteins you want from the best quality sources, and just loading up your diet with a ton of dense, fibrous vegetables, but just staying away from the starchy stuff and fruit. And that is going to be a great diet. There's no reason to not do that unless something starts to go sideways, right? And I think most people, if you're paying that close of attention to the diet that you're eating like that, then you're probably paying attention to a lot of other things in your life. But something that becomes really critical is that if you're going to steer clear of the starches, then you need to modulate your exercise appropriately, right? And this is what we've seen, and your overall life stress, right? These are the things that tend to burn glucose, right?
Yeah.
So we see this with the CrossFitters. You go ultra low carb, or keto, or even just low-ish carb if you're CrossFitting hard enough, and over time, or it doesn't have to just be CrossFit. It can be any sort of high-intensity protocol, right? But over time, you will deplete your body's ability to recover from that stuff. And what it looks like especially for women, but you see it to a lesser degree in men, is they start to see like their sex hormones drop out, right? So you get some kind of hormone dysregulation. You get, your period might get weird. Your libido goes away. You start storing fat in weird places. So this is the kind of what starts to happen here. And so people that catch it and they're like, okay, now I'm going to add this, this carbohydrate back into the diet. And then if they were super low carb long enough to be insulin resistant, now they add the carbohydrate back in and they start to gain some weight. And now they're in a total conundrum because they doubled down 4 times on the low carb thinking that was going to do it. They started exercising harder and harder and harder. And then they're like, oh, aha, all I have to do is add carbohydrate back in and it fixes it. And then they add the carbohydrate back in and they get fat.
Right.
You're like, oh my God, what is going on?
Yes.
And really, it's just, you have to understand these mechanisms and that this stuff is taking place, and ease back into it.
Well, and also I think it's important to recognize early on that the first formula you come up with that works for you in this lifestyle is not going to be the formula perhaps that lasts forever. You're going to keep tweaking and twerking and doing different things to your macronutrient spectrum to make sure that it's in alignment with where your current weight goals are, your current fitness goals. You have to really, your stress levels, you have to kind of keep recalibrating and readjusting based on a lot of other factors. So, I think this is something that people make the mistake of doing is they think, well, okay, I did this, and you hear it all the time. I did this for the first 3 months and it was amazing. I lost weight. I felt great. And then all of a sudden it didn't work anymore. And, typically that's because it's a moving target. Our body is changing. We're readjusting. Our body is becoming more insulin sensitive. It's becoming, more fine-tuned. So as we become more fine-tuned, we have to let our nutrient strategy reflect that.
Absolutely. Very, very well said.
And it's not Socrates, it's Hippocrates. By the way.
Yeah, that's true. Actually.
I don't know why.
Because it's the Hippocratic oath.
Yeah. This is the mashup. This is what I do in my brain. I'm like, it's it's something Socrates. No, Hippocrates. Okay. Anyway.
Don't you say it Hippocrates? Isn't that right?
No, isn't it? Hippocrates. Good old Hippocrates.
Yeah.
No. Hippocrates, I think.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So anyhow, but back to the point that we're making here is that you kind of have to just keep learning. And that's the point of Unveil Your Wellness and Be the Wellness, is that each month we can recalibrate, we can readjust, we can learn from each other, we can ask questions in the feed, we can figure out what's worked for other people. People can share their experiences, and we can all start to sort of massage our own reality in a way that reflects what is going on with our person. And it's a moving target, but it's definitely worth staying engaged and staying on top of the new information that's coming out and really also tuning into your intuition. And we've talked about this before. Fine-tuning your intuition is a very important thing. And if you aren't feeling good, if you're not feeling like, just good every day, well, happy, rested and attentive and all of those things, then something's not quite right. And we've got to keep readjusting until you actually feel good every day.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And that developing that intuition is, there's actually some things that you can do, right? Like you're not just going to say necessarily, oh, well, I'm just going to pay closer attention to my body, but food journaling, is a decent way to do it. So that then when you go along and you're like, oh man, I really feel like crap today. Then you can look back at the diet from the day before and go, oh, you know what? That's weird. I had this. This is not something I normally eat. And then you pay attention to it down the road. And then you start to correlate those things back and forth. And then you don't even have to look at it anymore. You're like, oh, yep, there was definitely mayonnaise in the, whatever yesterday,
Right. Yeah,
like
absolutely.
your body just gets to a point where you can really start to tune that stuff in. And it's not just from the, from the food intake perspective. The same goes for your strength and conditioning. And like a point that I've tried to make, I'm not sure that I've ever said it outwardly, is that when you're relying on a program like ours, which is a remote coaching program for your strength and conditioning stuff, meaning that you don't have a personal trainer that you're training with every day, or in some cases you don't even have another human to like kind of watch what you're doing. You really have to be super dialed in to your body, so that
I would actually like to even add, if you have a personal trainer whose philosophy is no pain, no gain.
Right.
Because you see that all the time as well. It's like, yeah, you may have a personal trainer that you work with
suck
3 days a week. And they might tell you, suck it up. Tough titty, said the kitty, whatever, whatever one-liner I could throw in. And most trainers have that sort of sense. It's that mentality of that it doesn't matter how you feel, you got to get your workout in. And like Adam's saying, that may not always be the best case scenario for you.
Totally. Yeah. And so you just really need to pay attention to it. And the thing is that we know, like there's, when you take your, I went through the National Strength and Conditioning Association to get certified. And when you do it, there's like this whole list. There's more information on identifying overtraining than there is on nutrition in those courses. I mean, it's something that is pretty well understood. And so the things that you start to see, though, like that, how they manifest within your body, the allostatic response of your body saying, hey, wait a minute, this is too much stress. So we're going to change, we're going to modify our behavior so that we can recover. It starts to look like this feeling of impending doom when you start thinking about exercise, and you're like, oh my God, there's an elephant on my chest. This is horrible. This is going to kill me. I don't want to do this. Right. So you get that sort of a overall feeling where it's, and that can range from impending doom to like slight annoyance, right? Where you're like, I just don't feel like training today, somewhere in there, but it's usually very specific. So it's not necessarily that you'll have like a lack of energy to go play with your kids. Right. It's when you identify the strength and conditioning as the thing, sometimes you're like, oh man, this is not what I want to do.
I just don't want to do this.
I just don't want to do this. Yeah. And that's like a pretty good indicator. Also, if your sleep starts to become disrupted, like you're no longer sleeping deeply, that's a like surefire sign of overtraining. Lack of libido, a sort of like low motivation, low motivation to train is the word, but I guess we kind of covered that already. But so like those are some of the things that start to materialize.
And for women, just one more thing, and to throw this in for women, if your menstrual cycle starts to shift or be irregular at all, that's another sign that overtraining or
undereating.
Yeah, and it might also be a sign that you need to add some carbohydrate back in, just simply for women. Anytime you've got a thyroid issue, low thyroid, menstrual cycle starts to get off, anytime you start to see those hormone changes, you need to consider your macronutrient strategy again.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. I just had to throw that in.
Because
I wanted to make sure that I threw that in before we got too far down the rabbit hole just on your intuition, because like there's also real things that happen, totally. Real signs that show up. Yep. And for women, it's usually hormonal changes.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. No, and that's a good point, because it is, there are definitely metrics that you can track and things you're like, oh, wait a second, this doesn't seem normal, But so to get away from the sort of more negative things of like, I don't want to train, I don't want to do this. So you can identify when you're tired, right? And I think a lot of us are probably better at identifying when we're tired. But the other side of this is to identify when you're well recovered. Know what it's like to feel good and ready to train and motivated to train, so that you can, be a little more accurate when you're not feeling like it, right? So when you go and you get up in the morning and you look at the feed and you see the workout and you're like, yes, AMRAPs, that's a good sign. That means your body's like, let's do this. I'm charged up. I'm ready to meet that task. I've adapted to that stimulus, and let's do it.
Yes.
So,
should I give them the spirit animal test?
yes. Okay. Unleash the spirit animal test.
So this is a way that you can figure out whether or not you are actually tired, or if you're just being lazy, or whatnot. You can it's one more tool actually to have in your arsenal to figure out if you're prepared for the work ahead. And what you do is you sit quietly in a room for 5 minutes.
First thing in the morning, right?
Before you go work out, whenever, it really doesn't matter. It's spirit animals are on demand. It's like, it's not time sensitive at all. And you sit there and quietly summon whatever animal comes to mind first. And if it's a tiger, if it's something that's like ready to charge out and tackle the world, then you're good. You probably have an HRV score of green.
Right.
Basically. It's
Tigers
basically
equal green.
Tigers equal green. However, if the first animal that comes to your mind is a sloth, you may actually need to sit the day out. So, yes. This is a much less technical way of measuring your readiness score, but seriously, it works.
Yeah, it's like almost infallible.
Yes.
Well, there's not a point to argue against it, I guess. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. So
anyhow, if you don't have an HRV yet, you can try summoning
the spirit animal.
See how it goes.
Yeah, and Vanessa, you can email her directly for interpretation on what exactly it means. So if you wind up with something weird like a lemur, you're like, oh, the lemur.
What does the lemur mean? Yes, I have a database.
Yeah, she has it.
Or you could just Google. You could Google lemur
spirit
totem.
Animal. Yeah,
yeah, totem.
It'll probably say patience.
Yes, every totem I ever get has to do with patience.
I've seen 14 squirrels today. What is the squirrel totem? Patience.
Patience.
No. I also saw a lot of turkeys. What's the turkey totem? Also patience. Yeah.
Oh, just wait longer.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Yeah, but seriously, we're saying this in jest, but really it's about tuning into yourself and kind of being able to self-diagnose your readiness score and be able to connect with something that says, okay, this is just me being lazy and, kind of lazy and I don't feel like it. Or no, this is my body actually saying, please don't do that to me. I'm already in a state of duress and I need calm, I need clarity. And yes.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the things that can be challenging about it, and this is why we program in rest days, right? It can be difficult for people who are list followers and box checkers to give themselves permission to rest. We're like, hey, rest whenever you want. Well, some people are going to rest a lot and other people are going to not rest at all, and so we program in these rest days. It's like, no, this is what you need today is rest, and these are in my view, they're the minimum, right? So what's in the program is the minimum amount of resting that should be taking place. And the rest needs to be sort of, individualized. But, and I think part of this mindset can come from this idea that I don't know that it was popularized or that it comes from the way that we sort of in the Western world do diets, the 6-week get shredded and, the 30-day, paleo cookie challenge, lose 15 pounds thing or whatever, right? Everything has some duration. Like, I'm going to do a 6-week boot camp and I'm going to lose a bunch of weight. Well, if you're doing a 6-week boot camp, you can't miss a workout because there's only 6 weeks, right? So you got to get this stuff done.
Right.
If you look at it, the way that we're trying to approach this is that this is a lifestyle. This is something that you're going to do forever, right? And so what is missing 1 out of 10,000 workouts? It's not that big of a deal.
Exactly.
So if you're feeling tired, skip 1 in 10,000, skip 1 in 365, probably more realistically, skip 1 in 3,
Well, yeah. And we were talking about this yesterday, give yourself permission ahead of time if it makes you feel better to say, okay, every week, on Wednesday, if I don't feel well recovered, maybe I'm going to take the Wednesday workout off and I'm going to give myself that extra rest day or whatever it is. Pre-program a day for yourself that can be your flexible day. And then, if it makes you uptight and you're worried about losing the points or whatever, if you plan ahead and you've given yourself permission ahead of time based on some real markers, whether it's your HRV score, your spirit animal, your resting heart rate, whatever it is, something that tells you, no, I need a little extra time, and you honor that, give yourself the points. We don't care. It's about you sticking to your own plan. And, it's not about getting everything done. It's about long-term health and long-term goals, like Adam was saying.
We've been talking a little bit about trying to fine tune our intuition, right? And that's just sort of our going with the gut idea of how we're going to modulate our exercise and make sure that we're not overtraining and all that kind of stuff. And that's cool. It's super cool. But we also live in a time of amazing technology,
Yeah,
and there's no doubt that it's getting easier and easier to get quantifiable data that at the individual level on your phone, right? And we've talked about it a little bit, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit more here, is the HRV. So there's kind of two things with regard to heart rate that I like for tracking this stuff. And one is HRV, which is heart rate variability, and the other is just resting heart rate. Heart rate variability is, as of now, it's the best measure of recovery that we have. It's because basically what it's doing is it's tracking the intervals between heartbeats, and the more regular the intervals between heartbeats, the more sympathetic nervous system or fight or flight stress response your body is in, right? So if it's beating along like a metronome, click, 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 you're probably in a stress response, right? And if it's, kind of beating every now and then, and there's a lot of variability between the distance. It's like boom, 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 that kind of thing. That's parasympathetic. Your body's not paying that close of attention to what's going on. It's just like, hey, we're running, man. Everything's cool.
Yeah.
Right. So
we're on cruise control.
We're on cruise control, and we're just chilling here. So having high heart rate variability is a good thing. It means that you're in your parasympathetic nervous drive and you're generally rested and recovered. Now, the heart rate or resting heart rate correlates, and for a lot of people, like for me personally, it's very close. Like meaning that a day that I have a low HRV score, I almost invariably have a high resting heart rate. Now, it's not necessarily like proportionate, right? So like my resting heart rate when I'm beat up is only 5 or 6 points higher than resting, almost regardless of how. I mean, I might be having an HRV score in the red where I'm just like beat up, but my heart rate is still only up a little bit, right? So it's not as accurate. But if you know yourself and you track HRV for a while and you look at that correlation, then you can just do your resting heart rate and be pretty close a lot of the time, which is cool because the as it is right now, the HRV, you still have to wear a chest strap. They can't measure RR interval from the wrist-based heart rate monitors yet. I mean, it's just a matter of time, but for now, it's kind of a hassle because you got to put the thing on and then you wait and track it. Once it's in the wrist, then it'll just be a whole different ballgame. But yeah.
Right.
So that's cool.
So it is definitely, it's the most informative piece of tracking information that we have as of now. And hopefully, you can use that as another tool to reinforce your intuition. So,
Right.
If you have an HRV score that's in the red and it's telling you need more rest, you can correlate that with the way you feel. And you can go, okay, actually, I kind of did know that. Or, wow, I had no idea this would be a feeling I'd normally just push through and think I'm just being lazy. And, can help you to fine tune the inside. So
Totally.
I think it's not like they're inexclusive to each other. And, a lot of times I think we are trying to get more tuned into our bodies and we're trying to be more natural and more in tune and earthly and all that good stuff. But these things are available to us and they're great tools to help reinforce our natural state of being. So,
yeah.
It's just one more tool in the shed that can help you along your way to your better wellness picture.
For sure. And so I was actually listening to a podcast, the Aubrey Marcus podcast the other day, and they had a guy on there who makes the binaural beats, right?
Oh,
so
yes.
you guys know in the meditation challenge, that whoa, whoa, didgeridoo sound that's going on in the background, those are binaural beats, which are combinations of frequencies designed to entrain your brain to a different frequency. So it's not as scary as it sounds, but basically it's mind control. But one of the things that that he was talking about with that is that it's there's like, you kind of have to know where you want to go with it, right? Like, so there's binaural beats that can make you more focused. There's binaural beats that can make you more relaxed, and those are the ones that we were using, are the relaxation ones. But it's pretty cool stuff. So you can imagine taking something like that, and you're trying to decide which binaural beat you want to use or which of the meditations is best for you. And over a course of a couple of days, you could take your HRV, listen to one meditation, take a post-meditation HRV, and if your score improves, then you're like, okay, that one sent me in the direction that I wanted to go.
Yeah. Well, and I've actually pre-selected the binaural scale for, relaxation. So there's actually choices when we go and we choose the meditation music. You can actually choose beats. I think they're theta frequencies, or I can't remember exactly the name, but you can choose frequencies that actually, like Adam's saying is they will actually, pep you up or make you more engaged or whatever. And the one that we choose is actually to relax the brain. So,
yeah, I think it's beta, right? That's the
beta, I think, is the one. Yeah. And theta is the one that,
I don't know. Theta is like the super duper, right? Like,
I think it's the one that pumps you up.
Yeah.
I'm going to look it up right now because
it's interesting stuff, though, and
it's really interesting. Yeah,
because it's like, to some degree, you're kind of, it's really easy to go, oh, this is just kind of woo woo. I don't really buy it, but the studies are pretty robust, and you're like, wow. So then when you kind of read through some of these studies and you realize sort of how easy it is to manipulate the brain, you're like somewhat disappointed.
Yes, we're such simpletons.
Like, geez, man, really? We're just basically like organic computers? Interesting. Yeah.
Oh, no. So, sorry. Theta is the deep meditation relaxation. Beta is the active or busy.
Oh, there you go. So we have it exactly wrong.
Yeah. So we choose the one that is theta, is the deep meditation relaxation one. So, and it's funny because I sort of discovered this by accident, the whole binaural sound waves. And I did a test on myself. And I think this is maybe why we like the meditations, why we like the guided meditations, or even just the meditation music, because I've tested on myself doing meditation with and without it. And I noticed a significant difference. It really does calm me, bring me back to center. And I don't know if it's that my intention or my expectation is that that's what will happen, but I really do notice a difference. And that's why I wanted to stick with the binaural beats. Yeah. So those of you out there who aren't doing the meditations with headphones of some sort, check them out, get some headphones so that you can start getting the full effect of those binaural sound waves.
Yeah. Cause the way, I think what you're saying is exactly right. And it's like, so it's like an on-ramp, you know what I mean? It's an on-ramp to meditation where you may not quite have it together mentally to meditate without becoming distracted. But when you crank in the binaural beats, it makes it that much easier. Like, you have some degree of actual effective relaxation or whatever it is you're trying to do happening via entrainment, and it allows you to be more focused on not focusing or whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because, when I'm recording these, I'm actually listening to the sound waves. So there's also a response that's happening for me, the person guiding the meditation, that is also synced up with the binaural sound waves and is actually kind of speaking in cadence with them. And, I don't know to what degree that influences the meditations as well, but I know that in a way, when I'm actually recording them, I'm sort of entranced by them. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of an interesting feedback loop that probably is taking place, but it's cool stuff.
Well, don't you basically just open your mind to the cosmos and let the others speak through you for these meditations?
Well, yeah, I just grab a spirit animal, whichever one's on hand. I'm like, hey, Foxy, get over here.
What does the fox say? Let me hear it.
Exactly. You heard it here.
Oh my God.
Okay.
So much fun.
Our podcast is really starting to be quite interesting. It was like very, very structured before. We were trying to like stay very on point. Now it's like, oh, do you guys actually want to get to know us? Because this is the crazy that goes on.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty funny. You know what's
interesting? Adam's
well, actually, so there's a Burning Man camp. I may be the only person that thinks this is funny. I don't know. But there's a camp that's called Well, Actually. So there's like a big sign right out in front. So you're riding by, and you're like, well, actually. And to me, it's hilarious because it's just one of those weird, like Cliff Clavin sort of responses that know-it-alls like me have when people are like, hey, I heard, blah, 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 blah. Well, actually. And I'm like, damn it, I'm that guy. It's
so true. We have, a little dynamic in our group. There's the 6 of us that are like BFFs, and we're all basically, if anyone has a question, it gets directed to Adam. So
like immediately, and sometimes like not even smartly. You know what I mean? Like of all of us in the room, why are you asking me?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an answer, and I think that's probably why.
Well, you will give us an answer, and usually randomly you'll have some insightful information, like background information about the topic. So everyone's like, I don't know, ask Adam.
It's true.
Yeah, it's true.
Random facts.
And then I like to argue because that's my favorite game. I like to tell him how what he read is incorrect and how my gut tells me something different.
Yeah. Well, intuitively,
I think you're wrong.
Me and PubMed. But hey, it's fine. I mean, you are probably right.
Just PubMed hasn't caught up yet.
You just haven't quite got there. Well, you know what, though? That whole thing is really true, though. It is very difficult to get papers published that, contradict a lot of mainstream thinking. If you follow behavioral neurology at all, and behavioral neurochemistry, there's a lot changing in that. I mean, this whole idea of determinism and decision making and all of this kind of stuff is really sort of shaking the foundations of a lot of philosophy that we've just kind of thought for a long time. And now we have the ability to measure things that are really changing that. Like where do your decisions come from? How, like, when you consciously made the decision to lift your right hand, we can track where that initiated from. And it's like a noticeable time lag. Like your brain already knew what you were going to do before you, quote unquote, consciously decided to do it. And there's some really weird stuff like that that's going on. And one of the things that's difficult is getting the information out because people are like, what? This is way too crazy. We can't, this undermines our entire, understanding of things,
Well, yeah. And then you add in the fact that, we'll add an expectation to it. So we think this is where it's going to come from in his brain. And then the testing person is expecting a result. Yeah. And how does that influence the test?
Totally. So it's the witness effect, right?
Right. Exactly. So it's the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know anything.
Don't know.
Yeah. And that's why this is always my point. This is why I win every argument with Adam. Because I'm like, in my reality, that's not how it works.
That's not how it works. And to be perfectly fair, like, who am I to question whether your reality is any less relevant or accurate than anyone else's? I mean, all of the possibilities are probably taking place at the same time.
At the same time in some paradigm. Yes. Well, and this is why I think that, really tuning into your intuition, you have to also educate yourself because we have to have something to grasp on, something to stake our claim and something to kind of ground us into some philosophy, some thought pattern. But once you have sort of, some basics to your thought process and what you believe, then it is time to start looking at how you really approach your thought process, how you use your intuitive sense to make decisions, because it's not what we think it is. It's, or it is what we think it is. I don't know. I don't know.
Or it's both.
Or it's both. Yeah,
no, it's true. But there's a simple thing kind of along those lines. There's a very simple thing that I've been kind of ruminating on with regard to helping people be more open-minded. And because I and I sort of struggle with this stuff. Like, I like to have a place that I can drive a stake in the ground, like Vanessa was saying. Like, here is reality. Now let's explore. From here, let's see how far away we can get.
Right.
And I think that, but then that becomes that can become rigid, because then you start looking at all these other constructs and you build all of this stuff based on where you drove that spike in the ground, and where that spike got drove in the ground might change. Right. So I think just adding today to the end of what you're saying is perfect. You're like, this is what I believe today.
Yes.
Now it's open. Now you can change your mind. You're pre-set your ability to change. And I think that can be, it's certainly helpful to me. maybe I'm the only one that has this problem, but it's easier.
I think it's helping us as a species evolve faster, because we're able to move on instead of going, well, no, I staked my claim there. And that means if this isn't true, I have to pull that stake out. And I spent the last 10 years putting that stake there.
Stake in.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's giving us all permission to move through things a little bit quicker, and to realize that like the process is unfolding before us all the time. And what we know today, like you said, what we know today might be different than what we know tomorrow. And we just have to leave the door half open so that we can always keep cruising through the next space.
Constant refinement.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, dude, if you get that spirit animal on board,
the right one.
Yep, get a hippopotamus, see what happens. It gets real.
My spirit animal is a manatee. Who said that?
Who said that? It was probably Socrates.
It was probably Socrates. Socrates, most famous for identifying his spirit animal as a manatee.
Yes, it all comes
and
full
also
circle.
Giving a pretty dang accurate description of where Atlantis probably is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, okay, well, I think we have kind of covered the topics we wanted to talk about today, and then some.
And some.
And hopefully you guys are fine with us being silly and giddy. And
all those things.
All those things. I guess it's like the realness is becoming realer.
Right. Realier.
Realer, yeah.
And just a quick plug for Mark Sisson. Not that he needs a lot of plugs from me. I'm sure it's going to be super helpful for him. In fact, I think he's probably going to see like some crazy Alexa ranking changes after I say this.
Yes.
But I see that he's teamed up with Sweet Beats, which is a company who offers HRV algorithms similar to like iThlete. Hard to say.
It is hard to say.
So they teamed up and they've got Primal Beats HRV available now, which is pretty cool. And it's check it out. I don't know that I feel as though the cost is competitive. I think it's probably, once you have the heart rate monitor, it's relatively inexpensive, but probably like $70-$80 or something like that, and you're good to go. And it offers some cool features, that so like I use BioForce, which is much more of like a professional coach's tool. And so it has like a lot of capability, but not a lot of user friendliness, in comparison to like what I'm seeing with the Sweet Beats. There's just some very fun things on there that I think will make it, probably more useful for the average bear. And it's cool. So check that bad boy out.
Yeah.
Get on the HRV train.
Yeah,
today.
We started out with like going, well, HRV is kind of a cool tool if you feel like it, whatever. But now it's like, maybe just do it if you can.
If you can.
Check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't track every day, but I don't know, when Vanessa got me the BioFirst thing for my birthday in 2010 or something like that, so I've been doing it off and on for quite a while. And what I've really found is that the most useful component, unless I'm going to do some sort of hard training situation where I'm going to be, ramping up or making a big change in my strength and conditioning, then it's nice to get like a window to see what's going on with that. But it just really helps you fine tune your intuition. I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that it's just one of those places that you can drive a stake in the ground and go, okay, well, here's some kind of measurement to work from.
Today. Yeah. And I'll take another one tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah. Between that and your binaural beats, you will have this spirit animal like no other. You may even have.
Yeah. So that's what happens, right? Over time, as your HRV score improves, your spirit animal becomes more and more like gnarly. So
Ooh,
you
yeah.
go from being a sloth to like eventually your spirit animal's a dragon.
Ooh,
And you're like, good to go.
this is a good test.
Yeah.
Somebody out there, please track that. Maybe that person should be me. I feel like it should be someone other than me, though, because
I agree.
I have a few other influencing factors going on in my life.
Yeah, true.
So anyhow, I just, really quick before we sign off, wanted to just say what a cool energy is existing in the feed these days. And it seems like everyone's in a really nice groove and really sort of grasping the program and really helping each other. And it's been just a really sweet thing to watch. Before it felt like Adam and I were we needed to be more involved in each conversation going on because we wanted to help shed light on certain subjects or whatever. And now it's like you guys have really picked up the ball and are sharing with each other, sharing best practices, getting, you're helping each other much more. And it's just really beautiful to see.
That community aspect of it that's just super awesome. I mean, of
It's
course,
amazing.
we're still totally essential.
Yeah, I mean,
But
who
no,
else is
and the
gonna
other
tell you
thing.
to find your spirit animal?
Exactly.
But,
How else would you know about the spirit animal HRV test?
yeah, exactly.
But the other thing that I think is super cool is I think some of you guys got together, right? There was some sort of Beethewellness impromptu.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't know about this. I
Yeah.
missed
It was,
them.
what it was, I think it was the week that we were transitioning into zero connectivity.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So anyway, if that did in fact happen, good job. I hope it was
Yes.
fun.
Good job.
That's just super cool.
Yeah, and we, anytime that folks are doing stuff like that, let us know. We can also put it on Facebook or, whatever you want. We are happy to help facilitate those connections any way, shape, or form. So, we've been racking our brains of how to really get everyone together, but
Take
it's
the
just
show on the road. Yeah.
really tricky. Yeah, that's the only thing we can think of. But then, we're still only coming to pods of people in certain areas. And I don't know, we're open to suggestions about how we can make a more communal situation. I mean, maybe we end up doing something like a PrimalCon eventually, where every year we do it somewhere. Like Oxnard was a great location. It actually facilitated our needs quite well.
Yeah.
Maybe we just pick up the ball and keep carrying it forward from where Mark left off and create some kind of...
Primordial Stew offered up a place that I'd never even heard of before, so I had to Google it. And now I'm going to forget the name, but it's amazing. Yeah, shoot, what is it called? It's the Boundary Lakes, maybe?
I don't know.
He's like, oh, we should meet somewhere around Boundary. I'm like, yeah. Wait a minute. Google Boundary
Is it in
Lakes.
the middle?
Boundary Waters. That's what it is.
Okay.
That's like upstate New York, I think.
Oh, okay. On the East Coast, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think there's going to be need to try to get everybody together. I don't know. It's obviously logistics are a tricky thing when people... We're in these human bodies. Maybe if we can really tackle the spirit animal thing, we can just meet somewhere spiritually and call it a day.
The great zoo in the sky.
Yes, exactly.
So it's actually in Minnesota.
Oh, Minnesota. Okay.
I know it's probably super obnoxious that people from California don't know anything about it anywhere else.
I know, we're so obnoxious. We're like, where
Californians?
Well, I know where Minnesota is. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, I know where it is, but I didn't know that the Boundary Waters were in it.
east.
But now I do.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. Well,
All right,
signing
folks.
off, everyone.
Yep,
we have
if
literally rambled on for an hour and a half.
Anyone is still listening?
Yeah, exactly.
Enter code super arduous listener for a free something.
a free ice cream banana.
Yeah, frozen banana.
No, ice cream. Apparently, there are bananas out there that taste like ice cream.
What?
Yeah, it's on my Facebook. It must be true.
Clearly.
All right, everyone. Have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.